Riccardo. I'm very happy to welcome you here in the show.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, I have to tell you a little bit about Riccardo, of course. He's a renowned director, creative strategist, and storyteller whose visual language is as poetic as purposeful. And with roots in both classical arts and cutting edge creativity, he crafts films and campaigns that doesn't tell stories only, they move people, inspire thought, and ignite change. And he tries it always to go better with that. So his collaborations span global brands, cultural institutions, and human rights organizations, always with a focus on authentic emotion and meaningful impact. And to be honest, when I think about you, Ricardo, I think about this poetic small shots I know from you. This love for the detail and for the poetic in its detail. You are not just photographing a cup with a rose next to it, where somebody else can think, "Oh, yeah, it looks like romantic and a nice coffee break or tea break." Um, it feels like so much more, like diving into an or storytell, or driving into a small moment where you put together a lot of emotions and feelings and senses like dust and smell and so.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I'm always aiming for that, so I'm glad that you did that on my work.
And I mean, I was really super interested in which song you would suggest me. When you sent me Crazy, and that was your first choice. I mean, you had also another choice, but with Crazy, I I felt really heartwarmed because I mean, for me, it's a song which is ultimately about self-awareness, and this is so important in nowadays times. The narrator wonders whether it's his intensity, emotional sensitivity, or unique view of the world makes him crazy, or if society's rigid norms are the real problem. And I think it's super intense and important for nowadays times. Can you tell me your view or your experiences which are combined with the song?
Yeah, it wasn't easy to choose the song to for this show. So I have a special playlist with some of my favorite songs, and when I was browsing that a couple of days ago, this one really stood out, and then I started to read the lyrics, and I remember also something that really fascinated about this song, which was quite
Mhm.
famous. I think it came out in the 90s or something like that.
Mhm.
It was the fact that actually it's not an original song. It's based on an Italian song written by two brothers, the
Mhm.
Reverberi brothers, and it's a song that was originally used. It was inspired by the spaghetti western,
Ah,
and it was used in one of the first spaghetti western,
yeah,
Django, which was then also it became a film, and it became also another film by Quentin Tarantino. In fact, that song, the original song, Not Crazy,
yeah.
the original song was also used in the Quentin Tarantino films. So I like the fact that um, there's so many layers on this song.
Mhm.
I like the fact that it's got some strong Italian roots, and no one really knows about that. And I've only found out recently. And then there's the title, Crazy, and I think
Mhm.
you have to be a little bit more crazy. It's a crazy world. But the way I reframe it is that actually it's good to be crazy in a
Yes.
good way, in a positive way. We need to disrupt
Yeah.
what's happening, the status quo, and we need to be more creative. So I think creators
Mhm.
are a little bit crazy, and that's why I like the lyrics as well. And it's a very cheerful song as well. It kind of puts me in a good mood every time I listen to
Mhm.
it.
Same here. And I like what you said because I think creativity is that what we call human and what is our value of humanity and being human in this digitalized world. And we should never forget that creativity also means crazy, also means thinking outside the box, also mean that you behave unexpected, against the law, against the norm, against that was other people think you should behave like. So this is so, so, so important and more important than ever, I think, in times where the media, where the consumer goods industry just want you to be normed, that they can calculate with the sales, the politics that you can calculate with your vote. Everybody wants to have you calculated, and the machines, the AI, does also something in this direction that they try to convince you, try to find which persona you are, and bring you in this direction that you should think this and that, act like this, and
Yeah.
therefore. I love what you said. Craziness is, I think, a value of being human and being and driving humanity with a diversity, which is one of that asset, which is a typical human, I think.
Yeah. And also I think some of the lyrics really resonated with me,
Yeah,
when it says, but maybe I'm crazy, maybe you are crazy, maybe we are crazy. So there's a sense of community and connections. We all have creativity in ourselves. We all have something in common. And also, perhaps a bit of craziness is what makes us human. And the fact that the lyrics somehow are almost like reminding us that this is what makes us irrationally and beautiful in many ways, and that's our journey as humans, I think. So it's that kind of sense of actually not being that difference, because we have that kind of spark, and that's the same spark that we all have. So
yes, absolutely. I'm just laughing in myself because I had a small story with my son this morning. He didn't want to get dressed and didn't want to go to school. He's a 6 years old boy, and so he hid somewhere behind books. And when I came there, he made a loud noise, and he expected that and that I get very angry. And I got angry for a second, and I started laughing. And he looked at me completely confused and said, "Are you crazy?" So I think sometimes it's super important just to break the situation, to do the completely unknown or the unexpected, to get out the potential of the people.
yeah, I think also when I know we're both passionate about sustainability and about climate change,
Yeah,
all the terrible things that are happening to our planet, and I do think also when it comes to communication, for example, so important to be a bit more crazy, because I think there's a narrative about sustainability that is something. It's almost that kind of a doom type of
yeah,
narrative where we're all gonna die in a few years. So I think to me it's very important also to revitalize that and really kind of shifting the narrative and really thinking in a different ways, and
yeah,
being a bit more crazy about how we tell those stories, reframe it and be more creative as well, because nobody wants to see a bunch of data, they want to be excited about the fact that we can actually fix this planet, and to do that we need to be a bit more crazy, we need to think a little bit more out of the box, and we need
yeah.
to take some actions as well. So there's a lot in this song, I think.
Yes, that's really, and I mean, I like it very much that you get to the point. Yes, craziness doesn't mean that you're alone. Craziness is great if you are this together, because if you're crazy together, then it could be a real good party, and it could be a really good think tank.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ricardo, I mean, when I remember what you said about what you told me about you, and I have some ideas of really romantic childhood in my mind, and maybe you can illustrate this a little bit. And when you think back to your childhood, what is one of your earliest memories that defines who you are today? What drove you in the direction?
So like something that happened in my childhood that
Hmm.
influenced me. Well, I think there's many things that in my life, in my early life, influenced me. I always had a passion for stories, and I think for me, art and storytelling was a way of creating a safe castle where I could live and almost like in an imaginary world, and choose the kind of people that I could interact with. So I spent lots of hours with. with my imagination, with my creativity, and using all sorts of things to create stories. And so I had like minifigures, I had cars, I had pebbles, I had all sorts of things that I used to use to tell the stories uh,
Hmm.
that
And
I
did you
knew.
tell them to yourself, or did you had also an audience, or recorded it, or wrote it down, or shared it with somebody?
At the beginning, it was mainly myself, So
Hmm.
it's quite interesting because at the beginning, some of the early memories that I have is that I was very lonely, and
Hmm.
there's there's many reasons why I felt that way, and
Yeah,
but I think I found that kind of a playground or comfort in stories, and that to me is probably what I needed in the early in at the beginning of my life.
yeah.
But that's quite interesting because later on, actually, I became a very sociable person. So I love people. I love being with people. So it's interesting. Maybe I need to start telling those stories. To connect within my deeper self, and perhaps finding tools and ways of connecting with the outer
Mhm.
world. So yeah, maybe.
And I mean, you said you had figures, stories. Have you had there something which is a kind of, yeah, was a kind of background, or was a kind of thing which leaded you in this direction? Were there fairy tales you took to learn from, or was there media or movies which inspired you?
Oh, there's loads of things that inspired me. But actually, one thing that I remember, I clearly remember when I used to visit my grandma in the Alps and
Hmm.
South Tyrol. I remember clearly that she had these amazing fairy tale books. I think it was the Grimm brothers illustrated book.
Hmm.
And the whole experience was incredible. Listening to her outside, perhaps there was snow, and it was just beautiful, very magical. And there were maybe more than one children as well listening to her. But to me, was what really captured my imagination, and it was the illustrations. I can't remember who was the illustrator, but it was just a beautifully illustrated book.
Hmm.
And it was just so nice to actually, while I was listening to her, also
Yeah.
watching these illustrations, these drawings, and that to me was incredible. So I think for
Hmm.
me, what made it even more special was the experience.
Hmm.
A bit like one later on experience when I started to show my first films into cinemas. It's that kind of experience that you have through stories.
Yeah.
And it was just beautiful, and that kind of connection you have between an audience, in that case it was me, and the
Hmm.
storyteller, that's quite magical and hasn't really changed in centuries.
Hmm. And do you have there a kind of role model, if you think back, or also nowadays for that?
I had many role models. I mean, my grandmother was a great role models in many respects because she was
Wow,
a great storyteller, but also she started paintings with Giacomo Balla, which is a futurist painter from the beginning of the century, 1900.
nice.
And so it was fantastic to watch her painting, to look at her paintings, and knowing that somehow she was associated with this very famous painter, and she was his assistant as well, and she learned from him as well. So it was
Nice.
just incredible to know that that's part of our family history somehow. So.
That sounds nice. I can imagine a little bit, or try to get into it while you were explaining and telling. And I'm looking forward to get deeper into your stories and to imagine. Riccardo Say, a very visionary director and creative force, discover how he transformed emotion into film, blending art, storytelling, and purpose. So, Ricardo, we continue our talk now, and I'm very curious to hear a little bit more about your childhood. You said that your grandmother inspired you very much by her paintings, by her, but also by her friends, where she got. Had some friends in a group which was consisting of quite famous and important voices in this world of creativity. Mm, But you said also that it was the nature, but also the world of figures which inspired you to create your own stories. If you look back, what what is the first you picked up a camera, and what feeling was it in that moment? What made it with you?
They, I mean, I think I had well, I had a few cameras over the years, and each camera is different. But yeah, some of the first cameras that I had were very rudimental in many ways. So, I mean, compared to what you can do now with cameras is a completely different story. But when I first had a camera, I had that kind of sense of being invincible, that I could really travel the world and learn, experience, meet people, create incredible stories just with that single camera that I had. It's that sense of, yeah, really being invincible in many ways. And that was very empowering for me to have that kind of experience. And also later on, when I started to produce my first short films, and then I started to show them in public. With an audience at film festivals and winning some awards as well.
Mhm.
Some of the short films were just very rudimental, and some of the first stuff that I've done. And but at the same time, what was beautiful about that is the experience of actually having an audience. Because
Mhm.
I do think there's nothing worse than creating art without thinking that someone would actually watch or experience your art. So I always think about doing something that is uh, very true to my nature and that really reflects um, myself, my personality, what I like and what I dislike as well. And
Mhm.
but also trying to link that to a sort of a mission as well, you know. So what am I trying to do
Mhm.
with that piece of art? Could be a film, could be a photography, could be anything, you know, or script. But really thinking about the audience because I think to me has always been quite an important aspect. And I've learned that also from like from my family as well, from my dad, my mom, my grandfather. You know, very, very important role models in my life. They really shaped also um, my purpose. You know, so
Mhm.
it took me years to understand that, but and I channeled that through my work, my artwork.
Can you explain it a little bit more on how they inspired you? Maybe there was a moment you can remember, or maybe a sentence what they told you, or a picture which you have in memory in your mind about a scene.
Yeah, I think if I have to think about a
Mhm.
picture that is very dear to me, it's a quite a large picture, portraying all the employees of my grandfather's from my mom's side factory. So he used to run a very successful business,
Mhm.
um cutting wood and preparing wood and selling in
Wood.
Italy, both, yeah,
Mhm.
wood. So his business was located in the Alps, but then he's opened
Ah.
up different branches in different part of the world as well. So he was
Mhm.
very successful in the
Mhm.
just after the Second World War. And but the beauty about that is the fact that he was actually running a very sustainable business. He was an enlightened entrepreneur because he was very charismatic person, but also he was very really thinking about his people,
Mhm.
the people that were working with him. So looking at this picture where he's at the center of the picture, but then there's my grandmother as well, his family as well, my mother as well. I think most of the sisters and brothers as well of my mom as well
Mhm.
together with the employees. To
Oh,
me,
nice.
it was incredible, surrounded by all these trees, etc., that have been cut by the factory. It was really incredible because, in a way, I knew that he was an entrepreneur, really loved and respected by people, and people still remember now. He's been dead for a couple of decades already. So,
Oh, I'm
so that
sorry.
role of leadership for me was very, very empowering, and really thinking about, yes, making a profitable business, but also thinking about the internal stakeholders as well as the external stakeholders, and really the people, you know. So my granddad was, uh, he really believed in humanity. He was a very
Mhm.
positive person, and I think I took. his vision of life into mine as well, into my business. It was very inspiring person. And he really 100% believed in me. So it
Great.
became a great mentor. He still is a very important mentor, even if he's not alive anymore.
Wow, that sounds really interesting, and because it sounds really inspiring because so often you have it that if the father is successful with the company, he wants his son to drive in exactly this direction to take over his baby, and then he doesn't want to go because his baby means to him so much, so there's not really space for the son, but that he behaved like this shows that he had a really big heart and a wide perspective and understood what human being needs or means and how much potential is there if you just unfold that what everybody brings. I can imagine now a picture like this, and it's nice. I wish that we have more of this in the spirit of today's companies. I think if the owner or the leaders feel more like that, then they would have less quiet quitting, less burnout, and quite more understanding of what a company makes very special and successful for the further.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he was definitely a very enlightened person who had a big visions and who was cutting trees, but also planting new trees as soon
Wow.
as he did cut them. So he was a very, very a great visionary in many ways, and his love for people and for humanity for me was so inspiring because I'm very hopeful as well. I mean, I know we have so many challenges at the
Yes.
moment, but I've got hope.
Yeah, same here. I think hope is also a quality which keeps you ongoing and which keeps you looking into the right direction because it's up to you if the half glass is half full or half empty. And that's also what you make with you then or can change with you. You the same situation can be defined in this or in the completely different ways. And I mean, you have, or you're busy with the work which is deeply emotional, and you are so successful because you know how to drive these emotions into products. How do you deal with these emotions? Because I could imagine that you're sometimes somehow so deep into it, and it's hard to get out of that, and to combine it also with the life around, and also to feel what is a real life, or what is a real life for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm Italian, so passions for me are part of my DNA, but I'm also a Gemini. I'm also a creative person. So I'm kind of stuck with my emotions. So for me, they are my secret ammunitions that I use to really propel my life forward. So I've based my life and my career around my emotions. So
Mhm.
um, sometimes I got burnt by my emotions, so
Mhm.
sometimes I got overwhelmed by them, and there's always an element of fear when I'm about to make a film. If we're talking about film, could be anything
Yeah.
else as well. So I really like what Anthony Hopkins, great British actors, said in an interview a while ago. He was talking about the fact that now, after being such an incredibly successful actor, he's still scared when he goes on stage, but not just the first day of the show. Literally every night, he's scared, because they have multiple shows. So, and it's like, come on, Anthony Hopkins, how comes he's scared of going on show? But I think it's important to have that element of fear, and
Mhm.
overcoming that, So in a way, I think it's a journey, So if we think about stories are exactly based around that. The fact that one hero doesn't want to leave a status quo, an area of comfort or a time of comfort, but decides
Mhm.
eventually to start a journey because something triggers that journey. And he has to face his own inner demons, but as well as outside monsters, or it could be anything, any kind of obstacles or antagonists. So I think there's an element of really kind of going over your limitations as well, your fear, And I
Mm-hmm.
think is yeah, I think it's important to do that, because you don't
Mm-hmm.
know what's going to be on the other side of the wall, so that kind of sense of wonder, of adventure, of not knowing exactly what's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
on the other side. I think that kind of excitement, I think, is very important. And it's so with emotions, going back to emotions, for me, they are like birds, so they
Mm-hmm.
visit me, and I love
That's
watching birds.
nice.
Who doesn't like observing birds when you are on a seaside? You look at the seagulls, where are they coming from? Where are they going? So it's
Mm-hmm.
incredible to see them like waving at you, and maybe you wave back at them. They come and eat some food from the beach, and then they off they go to Africa, maybe, or to Greenland. Who knows where are they traveling to? Where are they coming from? So there's a fascination behind those birds, so it's the same thing with
Mm-hmm.
emotions, so I let them visit me, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm overwhelmed, and I completely disappear behind the emotions. But sometimes I just let them visit me, and then I wave goodbye at them when they go somewhere else, So I think I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of using them, for my work, and but not only for my work, also in my life in general. This
Mm-hmm.
is this is how I live my life, So I'm a very passionate person, I feel deeply things in general. I feel deeply relationships, This has always been part of my DNA, and and I
Mm-hmm.
and I try to go in and out, because otherwise,
It would eat you.
yeah, exactly.
And maybe it's also a kind of the feelings, maybe not only then fear, it's maybe also a kind of a respectfulness, isn't it? A respectfulness against that what we can't really grip, that what comes to you as a gift in any way, even if it hits you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I mean, I think this is a really, really, a really big gift because, I mean, it just reminds me. I had a discussion with a police president, and he was a former school psychologist working in schools where there's a lot of criminality. And he said, "Listen, it was not the the average of criminality, the high percentage of this, which shocked me in these situations where I worked there. It was the lack of emotions when I talked with these young people, um, getting that there's nothing. I try to touch if there is somebody who's maybe shocked or angry or sad or feeling like, oh, sorry, I haven't done, I shouldn't haven't done this. He said nothing. You could bump there, nothing. And he said this, what shocked him, because he said this, what I think if we are losing this, then machines made with us that what is really the big loss. Then we have not earned to live on Earth, and we have not earned that we are responsible for something which we never, most of the people never really realized what it's worthwhile living here.
Mhm.
And this made me really thinking um, how we can improve this, especially for the young, that digitization is not taking away their feelings and the deepness of understanding themselves. That this is a tour, this is a path. It's not a solution. It's not a click a second away.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think it's important to live in a culture where it's okay to feel things and also feel differently as well. And it's okay to cry, it's okay to smile, it's okay to hug each other, it's okay to laugh loud.
Yes.
So it's it's very important to do that, and I think I mean storytelling and art can help in that, in terms of like I mean for me, I don't know if you've seen this Netflix mini series. To me, it was really beautiful. Um, a series called Adolescence, which was a quite successful, and it was just a British gritty drama
Hmm.
about a murder, and but about a father and a son's relationship, but really kind of deep, raw emotions. But it was so successful. To me, it
Mhm.
proves the point that people want that. People they not. I mean, there's a place for the Marvel films. Nothing. I mean, they're not for me. But there's
Mhm.
a place for them. There's a place for science fiction films, which I absolutely love. But also there is a place for those kind of films which deal with raw stories and nitty-gritty stories and raw emotions as well. Because I mean, people see themselves in those characters, and that's how we grow as people. This is how we learn about ourselves. So to me,
Yeah.
that's really, really important, and it kind of make me feel that we're going in the right direction. Uh, but at the same time, I know what you mean. There's a sort of
Mhm.
sanitizations of emotions that sometimes is not okay. I mean, especially for men as well. I mean, I have
Mhm.
for men and we meet regularly to talk about men stuff because a lot of men, they don't actually talk about how they feel about things. They don't,
Yeah.
so what's wrong with that? So that's
Exactly.
why as a as a person, as a creative person, I always, as I said before, I always dealt with my emotions. So it's always been part of me. So in a way, I'm in
Mhm.
a privileged position because I always done that. But people who have different life, different work as well, that perhaps doesn't require them to have access to that kind of emotional baggage,
Yeah.
struggle with that. And then that's why, the suicidal rates of men in the after 40s, I think, is incredibly high.
Yeah.
So it's a big problem.
I'm completely with you. And this topic is so underrepresented. It is so important to work on this. And I get shocked by looking at the watch because I see that it's only one question I can drop at the end of our talk. Unfortunately, we need a second, really, Ricardo. So you can sort out which question you would like to answer, Worry. And do you want to leave us some ideas on your personal rituals or habits which keep you connected to your inner self? Or would you like to give us what story to the whole world should be told, which could maybe shift and change something for the better?
I'll I'll um, I'll answer very quickly to both then. My rituals is basically I'm a Buddhist, so I
Oh,
chant and I meditate every day. So for me, it's very important. It makes me feel grounded, rooted into reality, and connected with the rest of humanity and the planet. In terms of the stories that I'd like to share,
mhm,
there's so many stories, but there's one just very short. Kind of funny story as well, which is
mhm.
something that happened to me. So I had this plant, which I've only found out recently, that is a Christmas cactus that very dear friend of mine gifted to me 2 years ago, and it was a horrible plant. Really didn't like it at all. With the like fr- with just really bad. I didn't like it at all. So and eventually, I decided that it was a time to let go of this plant. So I was literally about to leave it outside my door because hopefully someone, a more caring person, would probably pick it up because in London it happens quite often. So I was about to do that, and then all of a sudden I saw these pink buds. Like the day before I was about to do that. And then like a week later, I just decided not to get rid of the plant. I saw these beautiful flowers, and eventually I repotted the plant changed the soil. And I realized actually it wasn't on just one plant, it was three plants. So all of a sudden I had three plants full of flowers after 2 years that I had this plant for. So that made me think about really how much we can learn from nature about patience, about
Mhm,
resilience, about beauty, about the
mhm.
fact that a lot of time, like beauty is quite hidden. We don't see
Yeah.
beauty. I didn't see beauty in that plant at all. I didn't even know the name of that plant. But all of a sudden, I saw these flowers and I was like, I know now that when the flowers will drop in a year's time, this flower will come back, so I can see the beauty there within the plant. How often we actually
Mhm.
don't see each other's beauty. And I'm talking about not only nature, but also in other people's as well. So there's so much learning from nature. So it's just a very short story, but for me it was very, very deep and very really resonated with me, and I've learned a lot, and I wanted to share that with you.
Thank you very much for sharing this with us, Ricardo. It was such a pleasure having you here. I wish we could extend the time, but yeah, maybe we should go for a second series of our talk. And thank you for the engaging discussion and for the inspiring insights. So I look forward to our ongoing exchange and the impact we will continue to make together. And after the commercial break, we will continue with the introduction of an inspiring book that we've selected for you. Thank you.